The following is a Sports Ethos presentation. Yo, welcome to another edition of Roundball Ramble. I am your host, Corbin Ford. You can follow me on Twitter at CorbinNBA. This is a Sports Ethos presentation, like the intro says, so check out Sports Ethos on Twitter at Sports Ethos, online, sportsethos.com. Pretty simple. They have everything you'd want from a fantasy basketball perspective. If you're into betting, they have that as well. They go into baseball, they go into football. You want your general NBA coverage, they have that as well, including this podcast by yours truly. So you want it, they have it. Definitely make sure to check that out. Would greatly appreciate that. Also, listeners, while you're at that, please take a moment to follow at Ethos Fantasy BK on Twitter, the single most dominant basketball and fantasy news feed on earth. Get all your NBA news in one handy Twitter feed, fasten the competition, and provides more analysis as well. Again, that's at Ethos Fantasy BK on Twitter. Follow now. All right, y'all. Listen, I am pumped. Time y'all listen, this will be Monday, the 20th of March. We are moving out of March almost as quickly as we got into it. It feels like I was ushering in the beginning of March just a couple of days ago, and not a couple weeks ago. But I am pumped to have on a very special guest. Big fan of his work. You can find him in a variety of places, but most notably on Locked On NBA Draft. If you're on NBA Twitter, you've seen a tweet by him. It's at MavsDra. Magic Draft. Richard, that's all I'm going in for the intro. I'm fumbling my way through. Sir, I am just pumped to have you on. How are you doing today?
Hey, I appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. Very excited to talk some basketball with you.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Always excited. It's been something I've been thinking for a while. I've been interacting with you, of course, for a bit now, on and off, just on Twitter. I'm like, I need to ask this guy, just to talk basketball. And then, the goes and it comes, the idea in life, and we're on it. So I'm happy. But yeah, man, I'm pumped. Just speaking of, obviously you cover you've been on the Magic, you've been on the Mavs, you're an NBA draft kind of expert, NBA media, of course, podcast host. With all of these different hats, can you describe your basketball journey up to this point? How did you kind of get into this? It's not only encouraging and inspiring to myself, but I'm always intrigued to learn the stories of others in this lovely but insane field.
Yeah, I learned to read by reading the transaction reports all the way back in 1999. That's how my parents were. I guess
wow.
And I loved basketball, so I was like, hey, it worked. I remember BJ Armstrong retiring, or one of the Armstrongs had retired, and that was one of the first things I remember reading. And really, I just fell in love with the game. My first life memory is a Magic game. I'm from Orlando. That's where the Magic gloves come from.
Love it.
But I moved to Dallas in 1999, and I couldn't choose just one team. It's just very, very descriptive of who I am. I'm very indecisive. So I kept both. And ever since pretty much the 2004 NBA draft, I've been a fan of the draft since Dwight Howard came in. And, that was the first time either of my teams really had a draft pick that meant something. And I was looking up this Dwight Howard guy before YouTube and everything, and blew me away. And it made me inspired to kind of want to see the next wave of the future before it really hit. I don't want to say the mainstream waves, but before it got popular. And then 2017 started a Mavs draft, really just as a way to preach that Donovan Mitchell should be a Mav in 2017. And without bothering the group of people who I had following me, which was a lot of, honestly, sorority girls from my girlfriend's sorority. And I was like, this isn't my target audience. They don't care about sports. None of these people care about basketball. And now we're here. Wow.
Well, I love that, man. That's kind of cool. Targeting your love early. I like that too. Like you said, different. I'm a Lakers fan by heart, but general basketball fan. But I like the Magic. I have a rotating list of 4 teams every year that are also going to be my focus. So I think it's funny. I was always drawn to the Magic Mavs. I'm like, why can't you like 2? Let's normalize liking more than just one squad, But that is really cool in terms of branching out and finding your target audience from an initial base that may not have been who you were looking to target there. But okay, I have to ask then. So Dwight Howard being the first kind of prospect that you were that you really kind of focused on. Was it interesting with both the Magic and Mavs being contenders like that 2008 to like 2012-ish range? Was it interesting kind of looking at the draft, even though you knew that your team probably weren't going to have any lottery picks?
I'm glad you asked that question and not the complete opposite end of that, of what it was like having two teams that could face off in the finals.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think that's kind of where I mean, I was a teenager at that point, so I was still pretty young, but I think for the most part, it's kind of when I polished out, hey, this is like what the draft is. And I got to, you're getting older, you're maturing, and like, you can kind of see, around, I was like 16 when I started really appreciating the draft a lot more, just objectively, more than just, hey, what can the Mavs and Magic do? And that's kind of when that evolved, was when both those teams were really good. Now, on the other end, it sucked. Having them knowing that they could face off in the finals any minute. Yeah. And people, dude, I think my number one icebreaking question from when I told people I was a Mavs and Magic fan, they go, so who do you root for in the finals? And I'm not answering this question.
That would be kind of yeah, that's true. Because I mean, you kind of want both to win, and you're still gonna feel kind of bummed if either goes down because you followed these teams for well over a decade plus at that point.
Yeah, and I just it was a nightmare for me, dude. I would wake up in sweats. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, listen, after Dallas went in 2011, it was in play. You know what I mean? Like, hey, they could. I mean, okay, real quick, I have to ask that too. Being a Mavs fan during that time, watching, this would have bugged me relentlessly. I mean, the Lakers kind of did something similar after that 2020 championship team, but you take a team that won, you have the blueprint set, and then you go and just chuck it up. Why? Like, as a fan, you seen them say, hey, we're just gonna offload some salary, we're gonna make a big run at free agents 2013, but like we just won a championship just now. Like, was there any sort of like, what are you doing type kind of thought there?
That's what most people here think. I'm not, I guess I'm in the minority where I'm like, they would not have won another championship with that squad. They caught lightning in a bottle.
Gotcha.
But they did do Dirk dirty, and they totally abandoned him from there on out pretty much. 2014-15 was, in like to 16, I guess, was a nice little redemption, but that wasn't it. And they kind of just screwed Dirk over the rest of his career after. That's kind of where, that's really my issue. It wasn't exactly that they didn't bring back that team. It's more that they didn't really try to even surround Dirk while he was still in his prime.
I get what you mean. Yeah, they didn't do him right the last couple of years, and especially once they let Monte Ellis and them go. I think the last iteration of like a quasi contending team. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But wow, well, didn't mean to take it down to such a downer there on a Mavs note. But looking at your kind of evolution from, I mean, you're still a fan of both teams, you still follow both. I love your kind of deep dives on different players on both sides, especially the Magic, just because there's so many young players on that team that are interesting to keep track of from a development perspective. But looking at that development, looking at your locked on NBA draft and your NBA draft kind of prowess there, what do you kind of take looking at this year's draft, kind of shifting focus more to this draft class as a whole? Like, how do you think about this class compared to like the 2021 and maybe even the 2020 draft class? I know everyone's different. I'm just now getting into like following the NBA draft earlier, like listening to your pod. And obviously I've known Raphael for a couple of years, Raphael Barlow, having him on the show, listening to him. So I've just started to expand my like not podcast, but like draft understanding beyond just, March Madness, NBA draft coming up, let's go. How do you kind of look at it since you're following this year round? What are your initial thoughts on this draft class?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, the following starting March is pretty normal, and you're really not that far behind or anything, because the hardest part about the in-season scouting is saying, like, is this a guy, or is this just someone who had a good game, or is this someone who's going to be good at college? But pretty much if you start following March, that stuff's mostly been set. I've added like one new name, I think, in the whole last month of March. So that's not really, that's the hardest part. I think you're not missing a ton in terms of, I missed watching him. There's so many full games on YouTube, highlights, things like that really do tell a full picture. But to answer the question, we've been spoiled by the last 5 or 6 drafts. Pretty much all of them since 2016 have been better than this one, in my opinion. Even it's closest to 2020. It's like if you took out one of LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards from 2020, that's kind of how I would look at this draft. I don't see a franchise changer. I think you're going to get a lot of good, very good players. Like the top 4, Chet has the most chance to bust, but even then, Mo Bamba is still in the league and getting love, and like Chet's a better player than him. So I can't see most of the top 4 busting. That's kind of unique. It's a high floor draft, though, not a really high ceiling draft. You're on mute.
It's my fault. Muted myself. Do it once a show, by the way, Richard. So there we go. At least we got out of the weather early. Once in a show, like either I'll realize it or my guest be like, "Hey, you're muted." But I'm gonna keep that in for posterity's sake. But going in, like, that's interesting that you say that, because looking at the top of this draft class, I guess is a great segue into kind of focusing on some of these guys. I was thinking, okay, you know, at least 2020, there was like a Zion. 2021, there was a Cade. Like, there's this one like transcendent guy. I guess potentially Chet could be that guy, but there wasn't as many questions about Cade from what I remember. There was questions about Zion in terms of durability and his weight and his frame, some of which has borne some fruit, you know, as we've seen over the last couple of years. But for the most part, there was so much talk about how great that player could be that any kind of talk about, you know, the downside was in the way kind of mitigated just by the lavish praise that was put upon that player. And there were several. I mean, Evan Mobley got a lot of love. Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball back then got a lot of love. Like, there was several players who have received that. I feel like this year I've heard a lot about Chet. Early on, I heard a lot about Paolo. There was a moment like around January where like all I heard was Jabari Smith Jr. I'm still on that train, but kind of going into that, you mentioned how Chet, you know, possibly high risk, high reward type player, but that, you know, more than likely is still going to have a spot in the league, even if he doesn't, you know, reach the expectations there. But I guess looking at that, is this in terms of potential NBA stars top heavy, like you mentioned, like just top 3 or so? Or do you think that there are other players that, okay, they're not going to be stars, but like we look back on them and be like, okay, second best player on the NBA team, like, yeah, I didn't see that coming? Or like you did say, okay, you know what, player X, I did see kind of sliding in the tertiary role as like a steady shot maker, offensive initiator type.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I'd say 2 or 3 of the top 4 should make an all-star appearance. It's pretty good in that way. It's just like, you know, with Cade, our question was like, is he a superstar or an all-star? And it was kind of nitpicking at that point. Whereas here, it's like, okay, is this guy a star or like a really good role player? Or just, I mean, is he a superstar? We really just don't know. It's a lot more variability to it. The top 4, I think, generally is Jabari Smith, Chet, Paolo, Jaden Ivey. So I think 2 of the 4 of those will probably pan out pretty well. And then one will be good and then one should bust. I mean, that's just kind of the numbers of the game. But some other guys that stand out is that couldn't. I'm just kind of stick to the lottery here. Jalen Duren is someone who's really tough to evaluate. The Memphis system is terrible. He doesn't have offense outside of the paint, and that really worries me. And I don't know how his pick and roll defense in terms of like skill and IQ are, but that's a big swing skill for me. Like, he has all the physical tools to succeed. Can he actually put it all together? Nikola Jovic over in Europe is a guy who he's a 6'10" shot creator, and if that translates, I mean, that's a star. And then Shaedon Sharpe, who's a weird situation at Kentucky. He reclassified. He was supposed to be graduating in a month or 2, but instead enrolled early at Kentucky. And he's a 3-level scorer with length and finishes like Jalen Green, athletic like him, can shoot, has all the makings of the superstar. And then one last one, you know, I think someone who's really popped out this year is Tari Eason at LSU. He transferred in from Cincinnati, was an absolute no-name, and turned into a really good player who can he's like Patrick Williams on steroids to me.
Oh, wow. That is pretty dope. Okay, yeah, I've heard. I mean, Shaedon Sharpe, I thought was interesting. I'm glad you brought him out. Tori Eason, I heard only a little bit of. I mean, listening him, like, you know, through the draft expert vine there, but that is really kind of cool. I mean, a higher upside Patrick Williams and that type of potential athleticism and such. That's pretty crazy. I guess kind of going from there. Thanks for kind of fleshing out some of the lottery, by the way. But like, what is your personal philosophy of, you know, best player available in the draft versus team needs, and how would you apply it with a specific draft class? I've been trying to do some mock drafts, just messing around for my own type of personal, I don't want to say personal intelligence, but like just trying to learn and kind of build on some philosophies in my own head. Okay, if the Pistons draft 2nd overall and Chet's off the board, or Paolo's their guy, like in that sort of mindset, you know, in this draft class, let's say you are, I don't know, I'm thinking the Orlando Magic, and you select 3rd or 4th, right? Paolo, Chet, Jabari, let's say all 3 are gone. Like, are you looking now at like another best player in that case, like just next guy off the board? Or are you looking for a team need, realizing that we have like all these young guards, you know? And like, yeah, Jalen Suggs had a rough start to his rookie year, but he kind of steadied the course more or less the second half of the season. Or, you know, Cole Anthony's been nice. Like, how are you kind of looking at that philosophy of best player available? or team needs in this draft specifically?
Yeah, so there's only two teams I'm really, I would say, tied to in terms of positional fit in this draft, and that's Orlando and San Antonio. If either of them are in position to get Jaden Ivey, the Spurs have a little bit more leeway in this, but the Magic for the last, I guess in the last 5 drafts, they have somebody from those drafts at guard. So like all but one, and that's bold. And whatever your stance is on them, you could say they have a lot of bench guards, not any really star guards, fine. But what if Jaden Ivey? I mean, like we've seen, Jalen Suggs is supposed to be that guy who's not a bench guard, but right now his offense is horrible in the NBA this year. So what if Jaden Ivey does it? Then you're in the same situation. This is just kind of one of the consequences of they drafted guards. You're straight. Now they have to live with the punishment of if there's another guard in this draft, they almost by nature have to punt. But ultimately, I think that's really guards is really the position I think where it's like that's when you shouldn't have overlap because that's the easiest position to get cannibalism in. Where if Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, and Jaden Ivey are there, they're not helping each other grow. They're all just competing, and like you want healthy competition that's full on. Like they're not getting better for the team; they're getting better for themselves or whatever. It could lead to a lot of issues, but ultimately, best player available unless you have a situation like that.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you brought that out. I was even thinking if the Magic did draft another guard, it's like basically old guard, if literally with Markelle Fultz kind of being the first star of the rebuild, and then of course Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, and now this next guy. Like that's several different players that, like you said, would probably work out to the detriment of each other, just having them all in that same area. But I always find that interesting, especially since, like you said, there are some teams that they draft this guy, by looking at who he is as a player. Great. But like by looking at who we also have on the roster, at what point do we overlook that and say, hey, let's try to take off the table? So I'm really glad you kind of brought that out a little bit. I guess shifting from that more to this top heavy kind of part of the drafts, just kind of your thoughts, because we could just kind of put on the bigs. You've already mentioned a few of them kind of rapid fire. So we could kind of, whatever time you want to devote on Jabari, Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Duren, and then we could maybe talk about Jaden Ivey and another guard or two that you're interested in. Just kind of getting your thoughts, a little bit of a mini kind of report on these guys, just by the level of interest that you have in them as a prospect.
Yeah. So, do you want me just to kind of go down the list and give a rundown?
Yeah. I didn't want to go boom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we can go. Let's start with Jabari and then we'll do Paolo and Chet and go down.
Works out exactly in that order, actually. So I was going to say, let's just do big board.
Love it.
I have Jabari number 1, Chet number 2. So I'll go in order. You'll kind of pick up the trend. They're not all in a row, obviously, but the first 3 I do are my top 3. So Jabari Smith, the way I've heard about him is NBA teams, if the draft happened today, he's the first pick. For most teams I've talked to, they say, Chet's body's not going to hold up for an 82-game season, and Jabari is a safely better player than Paolo. Now, the last time I talked to someone within the NBA was at the very end of the regular season. And mind you, Jabari had been playing his ass off all season. Paolo had really been slipping his final 10 games. Entering the ACC tournament, he was shooting 39% from the field, and he's 6'10", 6'11", so that's really bad. Whereas Jabari he kept going. His 3-point shot is elite. He's probably the best first-round shooter in the draft. He has great size. He can play defense. I do think there's some creation ability, but some of it still needs to be unlocked. He also needs to just get better at slashing and being aggressive. Ultimately, with him, you're looking at a bigger Klay Thompson, in my opinion. Take away some of the shooting, make him like a poor man's Klay Thompson, but add 4 inches, and you have that. It's not exactly 1-to-1 because, Klay is the number 2 shooter probably in the game right now, or all time, however you want to look at it. Him and Steph are elite, not going to put those pressures on Jabari. Moving on to the next one, Chet Holmgren. Do you want me to pause?
Oh, no, absolutely. No, go on. I was in love with the Jabari description because I'm enamored with the shooting that a guy like that can bring to the table. Like, okay, yes, on dribble, like stuff like that. There's questions, but like the dude can shoot. Like this is the NBA, the shooters, you're going to find a spot. And he has defensive upside already that he's showing just to great effect that you're probably going to get more of in general. But yeah, no, honestly, you're the expert here. I'm just soaking all this information, man. Keep going.
Cool. So I'll just pause after each one. So Chet Holmgren, we all know the biggest knock on him. He's skinny. I personally don't think it's as big of an issue. As people make it out to be, people are like, well, how's he going to guard this player? It's like, okay, first of all, who guards Giannis? Who guards Embiid? Who guards Jokic? Like, fine. If that's really your bar of guarding the greatest centers of our generation. Then, wow. lower the bar a little bit. Like Kristaps Porzingis couldn't do it, and he was an all-star. So like, I think that's a very poor way to look at it, because you're looking at somebody who, Chet Holmgren, in my opinion, of the time I've been heavily scouting NBA draft stuff, this goes about 12 years, 11, 12 years. He's got the best shot blocking timing I've ever seen. He does need to work on, biting on some fakes still, because he just knows so well and teams can manipulate that. But ultimately, his shot blocking instincts are just unreal. They're elite. They're about as perfect as you can draw up. He's also got a great frame where he can see over defenses and pass. He's got a really good basketball IQ, and just his defense is going to translate. He can contest shots on the perimeter, and even when he's beat in the paint, he can still recover well because of that length. He can still impact the shots. He shut down Jalen Duren, who tried bullying him the whole way down the court. Every single time he was in the paint, he tried just out-muscling him. And, sometimes Chet gets beat on that, but he still holds his own. And again, the IQ just really keeps him going. And on top of that, he's brought the ball up the floor a few times and just walked into threes. It's really impressive. You look at what Mo Bamba has been able to do, and I guess really not do, but because he's been pretty disappointing. But if you made Mo Bamba a little bit better and a better decision maker and more skilled with the ball in his hands, not like to make a superstar, but I mean, like, that's really what you got with Chet, and that is a superstar mold. So I really like him. I think if he can create his own offense in a little bit of space off the dribble in the NBA, which that is the superstar unlocking key, then he's going to be really good.
I like that, definitely. I know on the defensive side, especially, I mean, we saw what he did. We're going to bring him up in a minute, but Jalen Duren, who I was like, okay, we're going to see some real, physicality speaking. Like, Jalen Duren was insane, but looking at how Chet just swallowed him up literally with his length was pretty crazy. But I have a question for him on the offensive side, especially the shooter, like the three ball. It seems like he definitely has. Like, are you confident in his like general overall offensive game possibly being like a steady contributor? Do you see someone like 20 points per game? I guess I have more questions on the offensive side of the ball, even though, because he's not like, I don't think I would like, he's reminds me of Kristaps, like, I guess in frame and the shooting ability, but like Kristaps, I think is a way better shooter, unless, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, way better. You are perfectly correct on that.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, I think, is, Chet may be able to hit some jab step threes, hit some, one dribble, fakes and step backs, things like that. I think he has a little bit more advanced shot creation ability, and the fact that I think he'll also shoot threes at least above league average level, near that range. Not like anything excessive, like 40%, but he's going to be in that 35-40 range. And I think that combination of things is really special. I don't really know what he does. I don't want to say inside the paint, but I mean, like, I don't know how he's going to drive on players that are stronger than him. That's really where the strength issue comes for me. And that it's limited him. In high school, he was able to put the ball on the floor, dance around guys, posterize them, because he was taller. And the guys in high school, just like, I mean, we know this, your body isn't fully matured at 17 years old.
No.
And in the NBA, it's going against grown men, and it'll take time. I think the biggest thing with him is be patient.
Okay. Definitely. Wow. Well, I definitely appreciate that. Looking on from Chet to Paolo, I mean, he's someone that on the offensive side of the ball, I imagine there isn't a whole lot of questions. I guess a few in terms of shooting, but yeah, why don't you go into Paolo a little bit here?
Yeah, so he's got 3-level scoring upside. He's about 6'10", give or take an inch either way. He's good with both hands. He can create his own shot. He can shoot over defenses. He has a really good face-up jump shot. Like, Duke loves putting him in that mid-post. He turns around a little bit without dribbling and then just pops it right over the defender. Really hard to stop. And he can also play off ball very well. We're noticing this. If you've noticed the trend, both him and Jabari, their jump shots are very strong.
Yeah.
The issues with him, well, I'll say one more strength. Another strength of his is, I think, his passing is way more advanced than Jabari. That's a big edge he uses. He knows how to use his height a little bit better as a passer, whereas I think Jabari knows how to use his height as a scorer. He finds cutters very well. But on the opposite end of the weaknesses, if you watch some of his turnovers, I'd say probably 40 to 50% of his turnovers are him not being able to make a post-entry pass, like to Mark Williams. Mark Williams has sealed his guy, and he's like, I don't know, and he throws it like 3 feet to the left, and it's really bad. But the thing is, like, if that's your biggest issue as a passer, sure, you have some fundamentals to work on, but that's not like a glaring flaw. It's a very simple thing. It should be easy to fix if you have other strengths as a playmaker. And then defensive effort is a little bit, or skill both a little bit at times, come and go. And then also as he gets closer to the rim, when he played Florida State at home, there was a game. I mean, that game, every time he got the ball within 10 feet, I don't think he saw another teammate. So things like that kind of got to scare you, but that should be the worst thing.
That's nice. That's nice. I especially realized just most recently watching some just highlights and stuff of him, some scouting things on YouTube, like that passing and like the reads, like you said. It's funny how like some of the more advanced stuff are like some of the passes I think would be tougher to make just effortlessly, but like you said, like a post entry, like freaking out. That's interesting there. I guess going from there, now we're kind of outside like the main like three, but two guys I saw interesting. I'm going by your board as well, or just kind of players that you were interested in. Let's talk about Jalen Duren a little bit. I mean, he's not. I've seen him kind of mocked between like 6 and 11 in some more recently. I guess he's come on pretty fast. I don't really understand. Like, I'm not gonna pretend like I know. Oh, he's really risen up the last couple of weeks or whatever. Just to say that, but like from where I've seen him, and even in my own little mock draft I was doing, I was like, yeah, I feel like he could help a team as early as Portland at 7th if they weren't that way or something like that. What are your thoughts on Jalen Duren?
Yeah, I have him the lowest of the 5 players we're going to talk about, and I have him currently at number 12 on my board.
Okay.
I love his defense. I love just about everything there. I don't know if the pick and roll decision making is a Penny Hardaway Memphis thing or a Jalen Duren thing, because there's a lot of times where he's like, him and his teammate, I don't know if it's a communication thing. He'll be late to rotate and the guy's open for 3 on a pick and pop. I don't know what it is, but that really worries me. But offensively and just strengths speaking, like, he will score very well at the rim. That is something that'll translate incredibly well. He has an NBA body. He's a great athlete, and he finishes above the rim just so well. And he's a really good rebounder. Those second chance points, they'll come easy. He's also got good upside as a playmaker. He can pass out of post ups. He can pass from the top of the key to cutters. Really good at that. And also like high low sets. So if he's playing with another big, that'd be a really good combination. And then on defense, his shot blocking is incredible. The athleticism allows him to get everywhere. He's a great weak side defender. So if you're playing him with another big, he should really thrive. And his lateral quickness is really nice. On the other end of things, his offense outside of 15 feet, I would say. I mean, the second the paint there's no more paint, he's kind of useless on the offensive end if he's not setting a screen. So that really worries me. He has taken some jump shots, but it is not pretty. The form is really gross. And again, the decision-making kind of on both ends. And that kind of factors into just sometimes he'll make a turnover and you'll go, really, what are you doing here?
I was going to ask you about the shooting. I've heard a few things about, having some touch between like 10 feet. And it's usually not very high. It's like, he's made a few jumpers. Or in one game, I think he made like 4 or so. And I wanted to ask you, do you see that shot developing? From what I sound like, probably not, just because it's not like a nice looking jump shot. But the fact that he's staying in college is one of those things that like some college prospects, will be just an element of the game. They flash in lower levels and it will just go away completely. Do you think he can project that out? Or is he just going to be more of like that defensive deterrent, rim rolling kind of modern big?
Yeah, I'd say at least in his rookie contract, he's not shooting. I mean, DeAndre Ayton still isn't shooting, and DeAndre Ayton had a real mid-range game with a good jump shot, and he's just not shooting. I don't see why Jalen Duren's
should be
story would go a little different. I know like everybody's different, but someone with good form who did it in college, not shooting, doesn't make me optimistic that someone with bad form that kind of does it in college is going to do it that quick. So definitely, if it happens, it'll be give it 5 years.
Okay. Hey, that's solid reasoning there. I'm with you on that. Kind of lastly, I'll throw you one name I have left, and then if you want to add somebody else you want to talk about for a second, feel free. But Jaden Ivey, I mean, especially over the last week or so, heard a lot about him. What are your thoughts on him as a player?
Yeah, so I did some research on him, some final research. I hadn't watched him in a little bit, like in full in terms of scouting. I watched the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, but it was more just casually being like, dang, every 5 seconds with him. And but I mean, I don't think I have a single player with more strengths on my pros and cons list than Jaden Ivey. His defensive recovery ability, that athleticism, he knows how to use it well. He's a little bit skinny, so that's going to hurt him on both ends to an extent. But when you look at his change of speed and the way he gets to the rim, way he finishes at the rim, how well he plays in quick offense and that handle and the vision and everything like that, and how he glides in the air, I think he's a blend of three players. We see John Morant's name thrown around there. I don't think it's a one-to-one at all, but I think if you blend these three guys, you kind of see the strengths and weaknesses of all three of them in him. You get John Wall, De'Aaron Fox, and John Morant, which is a very star-studded trio of comparisons. That's kind of what you're looking at. If he had a little bit more reliable of a jump shot, I think he would be the consensus number one pick.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I mean, that definitely is a nice little grouping of the three there. But okay, is the jump shot's kind of in that? Is that a shot that is good for mid range, kind of growing out to three, like a Ty Washington? Is that a guy who just it's streaky, comes and goes? What are we looking at in terms of the outside shot? Kind of like where it can improve.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked at like shot charts for him or anything.
Oh, my
fault. If I had to just go off of what I've seen,
yeah.
He has a good floater and runner, so I think it'll ultimately develop. I've always looked at that as a way because touch and everything. But pull up mid range shooting, it's okay. His mid range as a whole, I'd say, is okay. His 3-point shot, it's just he doesn't get lift. It's kind of slow, and I don't know how well he's going to shoot over NBA defenders. So
okay.
I think here's my stance. I think he'll be around league average. We've seen all three of those players actually have been below league average as shooters, and they're all-star caliber players. So
true.
Clearly, the jump shot's a bonus almost more than anything, and I'm probably overthinking Jaden Ivey with that.
I feel you on that, definitely. Are there any players in this class that seem like not overrated per se, but valued higher than you have them? I mentioned, of course, Jalen Duren and how you had him a little lower, but still in the lottery, just more toward 12, and I was seeing him and putting him myself around like 7 to 10. Are there other players like that are people definitely are very high on? You're like, hey, I'm not high on them, but I'm just not all the way there yet.
Yeah, there's two guys in the lottery, generally kind of lottery range. One's a surefire lottery pick. The other may get in the lottery, and the other, who the hell knows with his draft stock. But the first one is Johnny Davis. I'm not there on him. There's a guy on Toledo, Ryan Rollins, and I think he's a mid-major version and does a lot of things better than him. He has better handles. But more on Johnny Davis, I should say on topic here. But my issue with him is like, can he create separation on his jump shots? He loves the jump shot. And to me, people are always like, oh, he's Devin Booker. He plays just like him. But Devin Booker isn't predictable behind screens like him, and he creates a lot better separation. I think a lot of people underrate that because Devin Booker's not a great athlete, but he knows how to separate on his jump shots. And Johnny Davis is very far on that front. Against Penn State, I think it was his first single-digit scoring game. He was getting blocked on half his jump shots, and that's really alarming.
Oh, God.
Someone else that's a little bit alarming for me is Patrick Baldwin. This one's a very quick, simple one. We haven't really seen the production. It was a disaster at Milwaukee, the FIBA tournament, the U19s, where people were like, oh, this guy's legit. He shot 32% from three, and he's supposed to be an elite shooter. There's been no track record of it really outside of like some AAU games. And I don't know how well that translates. Yeah, he's 6'9" with beautiful form, but Ben McLemore also had great size with beautiful form, and he's a journeyman. So I don't know what to make of him. And then the last one, I don't know how I've seen this guy still in first round mocks. He's averaging 3 points and 3 rebounds a game on 33% shooting. And that's Peyton Watson of UCLA. Okay. He was also on that FIBA team, and he was terrible at UCLA. Don't get me wrong. It's not all his fault. Mick Cronin was horrible for him, but that doesn't mean that, oh, he's still a first round pick. He would have literally the worst staff ever of a first round pick. And that probably dates back to the first NBA draft ever.
Oh, wow.
Like, you just have to look at it in context. That sounds so mean what I just said. He can get better, but he's not ready to go to the draft.
Wow. Okay. And there's one and he's already kind of set in his mind to. Now, mind you, I'm not fully shored up on this. He could declare and then kind of gauge the film, go back, or is this hit for him?
Yep. Yeah, they made it almost impossible for you to be stuck. So that's a good thing for him.
Good, because if you say it like that, like that's as definitive a take as I can get him a player maybe wanting to pump the brakes a bit. That's at least there's hope. Okay, good, because wow, that's yikes. I get you on that. I'm glad you brought two guys in particular, both Baldwin, but specifically Johnny Davis, where I was interested. I was going to put them on the list of players I wanted to kind of get more of a scouting report on, but I wasn't quite sure they were in the top, like in the type of set order that I knew three of these guys and Jaden Ivey would be, and Jalen Duren was just my own personal one. So I'm glad we did get a take on Johnny Davis. I didn't know what to make of him, to be honest with you. From what I saw, I'm okay, got some 6'5" shooting guard, but the way you described it perfectly, and I mean, with the shots coming and going, that's not great when you're a shooting guard like that. But kind of going from just the college, March Madness, everything there, but more to the G League. What are your thoughts on this G League Ignite team? and their prospects are looking to enter the NBA draft this year. You know, you have, of course, Jane Hardy, Michael Foster, Dyson Daniels, and Marjon Beauchamp. I know I haven't heard a lot about them in this upper part of the lottery, so I'm imagining them more toward the back, but I could be just going off of my own research here.
Yeah, it's funny because last year's Ignite team was definitely better, especially at the top. They had Kuminga, Jalen Green, and even Isaiah Todd. And those were the first they were 3 of the first 31 picks. But it's weird because you could have 4 of the first 35 picks be G League Ignite guys, whereas they only had 3 guys drafted from that team last year. And the only difference is I don't know if any of the G League Ignite guys go lottery. The best chance is either Dyson Daniels or Marjon Beauchamp. Dyson Daniels is intriguing. He's kind of like a combo of Jarrett Culver as a prospect and Malcolm Brogdon.
Okay.
You know, not athletic. He doesn't blow by people. He doesn't finish above the rim. And his jump shot, I don't know how to describe this over a podcast, but you know when you're playing, and I'm going to turn on my video so you can see this, maybe help. But like, you know when you're playing and you like, I got a ball right behind me. It's actually perfect.
Oh, so I love it.
Ignore the fact that I dropped my cup that it holds on. So sometimes guys will like put it normally. You really can't see, but my hand is right here.
Oh, I see.
It goes like all the way under, and it hurts my wrist just to do this.
Ooh.
But it's just to exaggerate, and it gets a good follow through, but he cannot get that off in time. And now that I've ruined my setup over here, I did it to myself. I'm an idiot. But that's my issue with Dyson Daniels is that jump shot. I don't know how well that is going to translate because it's one thing. Yes, you want your hand under the ball. That is a fundamental of shooting. But do you want it to be like hurting your wrist? I've done that trying to get my follow through back and it hurts. So that's my worry with him. He's really intelligent though. Great basketball IQ and quick feet defensively. He's going to contribute there. And then Marjon Beauchamp, I just don't worry. I worry about his jump shot and his handle to really translate to the NBA.
That is interesting. Yeah. Dyson Daniels, of course, is the one that I was intrigued by. The way you described the shooting, man, that I tried to do it when I saw you do it. I'm like, yeah, just contorting your wrist. No, I'm good.
Yeah, it hurts. I have a weak wrist. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's something with it, but like, and mind you, it was exhibition. But seeing him in that All-Star weekend, like the passing, some of the feel there was definitely really neat. You know?
Yeah, the passing is really nice too. He can pass in transition, half court, pick and roll. All of it. He's really gifted in that regard.
Definitely. Real quick before I exit out of this area, I heard Michael Foster. He's someone that I imagine is probably one of the lower of this group. What is your thoughts on? Is he someone that could? I mean, like back half of the lottery potentially, or not back half of the lottery, back half of the draft. Like he seems like offensively pretty kind of talented there. Defensively, and from what I've seen, mad to not really good, but I'm just kind of curious about him because he's just kind of there, in my opinion. And I know it's kind of, I mean, this is an outsider, so I feel okay saying that, but like, I don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, I liked him going into the season. He started very slow. I think he improved his body mid-season, and it paid wonders. He's really strong. Loves to play like Julius Randle. I don't think it's a real comparison, though, in terms of play style, because the jump shot is a lot better, and he's not the passer Julius Randle is. The issue for him is, can he guard smaller players? That's going to be his big test, because we've seen flashes of it, but we've also seen flashes of him looking like he's Enes Kanter out there. So, I don't know what to. He's a good athlete. It's a really weird combo. I don't know what to make of him. I personally would take him top 50. I think after the 50th pick, you're getting good value. Again, I just value things like you see the improvement mid-season, like him working on his body and things. It's almost rare. Take guys that have a work ethic, and Michael Foster is clearly one of them.
There you go. I like that for sure. Okay, and then wow, well, that was a really good breakdown of the G League in general. I really was hopeful that we'd see a lot more of them littered in that kind of first 14 or so, but I think watching where these guys fall is going to be interesting. Just 14th fit, and like you said, good value for some of these clubs wherever they go. I'll definitely be looking at Foster. He's someone I was intrigued by a little bit going in, more specifically. But Rich, I appreciate you coming on, talking draft with me, talking philosophy on that. Really meant a lot. Before I let you go, I do this with every first-time guest. It started, shout out to Sports Business Classroom, Las Vegas last year. I had on my phone wallpaper that was made for me. I had to give credit to guy on Twitter. I've done it before. I'll put the link. But I had a wallpaper of my 5 favorite players. Not like, and it was misconstrued almost off the top. But my wallpaper had Monte Ellis, Latrell Sprewell, Michael Beasley, Terry Rozier and Russell Westbrook. And so I was showing my someone I met in summer league. I was trying to get their number just for a connection. I flashed them my phone and it shows all 5. And they're like, whoa. And I was like, oh yeah, those are my like the top best players of all time. But my brain like didn't mean to say best. I'm going to say favorite. And they were like, and instantly I felt the judging. I was really, selling myself on someone who's like a big NBA fan. And automatically I was like, I did not mean it like that, man. So then I was like, you know what though? Like, that's so intriguing. Like, I am intrigued by like folks who, I want to get your favorite players. Like, what I think in a way it tells kind of what kind of made them fall in love with ball or their fandom, or it's evolved. At first I thought it was like a simple question, but I've interviewed but I had people on the show, like Brendan Nunez, who I think covers the Kings. And I think I'm getting this wrong. It might have been Matt Brooks who covered the Nets, but one of them was from Minnesota. And so like they cover the Nets, but like 4 of their 5 players were all Timberwolves. I thought it was hilarious. Or like, when I had Shane Young, Clippers guy, but general NBA guy, but like he was a different mix of players. I had another guy who was a mix of NBA and WNBA players. And I had my friend Gary Bouguet had like a first team, second team, third team. So all of that has just made that a question I have to ask you. Who are your top 5 favorite players of all time? I call it the Hoop Vibe Squad. Man. And what kind of, I want to get your 5. I'm really intrigued by it.
Man, okay, so it doesn't have to be positional, right? I don't need to.
No, it does not. Yeah.
Okay, that makes things easier. I think I know my answer. I've been thinking about this, and my lineup is a 3-guard lineup, a wing, and Dirk Nowitzki. So I'll start with there. I think that went without saying that Dirk is in there.
Of course.
It's gonna, I had my 5th spot. I was deciding between 2 players. One of my wings was I had this pretty safely. Wings, I say. One of the biggest guard, which was Penny Hardaway. Like I said, first memory was seeing him. Grew up Magic fan, so like he was iconic. Really ashamed to see him be under investigation now and like kind of fail at Memphis in that regard.
Oh man!
But still love Penny. My other quote unquote wing. This one's a more true one. Now this is where it got hard because I didn't know what to do with this. Okay. Do I take Vince Carter, who I grew up idolizing, or do I take the new and take Luka Doncic? So that was a tough one. I ultimately just went retro and went with Vince Carter.
Okay.
Half man. Like half amazing. Like
yes, sir.
I might have just botched it. Now I'm really worried I just called him the wrong thing. It is half man, half.
It is half man, half amazing. Yeah.
I was like, is it a different adjective? Okay, cool. And then my guards. So like I said in 2017, Donovan Mitchell. I was, he was my guy. I love watching him play. Unfortunately, as we're recording this, actually the Mavs are playing the Jazz. And I hate these days because they're playing Donovan Mitchell and our fans hate him. But the last one, Allen Iverson, first favorite player, actually. I grew up loving him. I hated the Lakers growing up. I apologize. I'm looking right at the Shaq poster. Dude, I loved it when he took game 1 or game 2 against the Lakers. And whichever one it was.
Yep, game 1, 48.
Yeah. And he walked over Ty Lue, like all I loved his game. He was the sauciest player I've ever seen. And like, I love his game.
Hey, that was a saucy pick. That's a nice, interesting 5. So it's Allen Iverson, Donovan Mitchell, Penny Hardaway, Vince Carter, and Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a unique combo.
That's a really good one. There's some balance on there. I'm not going to pretend to evaluate that on like a basketball level, but like the offense would be electrifying for certain.
Yeah, nobody's thought that.
Oh man, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Sir, I appreciate you. Listen, can you tell the listeners, obviously where they can find you, and your work, of course, and yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much everything's posted to the hub at MavsDra on Twitter. Anything I do on there, I'll post a tweet with a link to. That'll be either my site, MavsDra.com. I'll do big boards, mock drafts, scouting reports. A lot of those coming in the next 80-something days till the draft. And then Locked On NBA Draft every Tuesday I host. So that's awesome. That's my stuff I got.
Hey, really appreciate you spending the time here with me, Richard. Really thank you for that. Like I said, as a fan of it, it's worlds colliding, but I do appreciate it. And yeah, man, listen, I will definitely be staying tuned and hopefully get you on sometime in the future. But I thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And let's definitely do it again. This is fun.
Oh, definitely. All right, y'all. Definitely make sure to follow MavsDra on Twitter. Pretty simple, at MavsDra. Like, definitely make sure to check that out. I said that right. Yeah, I did. Okay. Don't know why I went and second guessed myself there. But you can find me on Twitter if you so want to. At Corbin NBA. Definitely would appreciate that. Check out Sports Ethos online. sportsethos.com, on Twitter at sportsethos. Simple there as well. One more time before I let y'all go, please make sure to use the coupon code hoopball20. I know we're Sports Ethos now, but hoopball20 is still the code we're using at manscaped.com for the 20% off your order plus free shipping. Also, check out our pals at mybookie.ag. Use the code hoopball on the third page of sign up to unlock deposit match bonuses there as well. So, hoopball20 for Manscaped. MyBookieAG is code hoopball. Pretty simple. And that's going to do it here for another episode of Roundball Ramble. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me again. Thank y'all so much. For MavsDra, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay frosty, and I will talk to y'all real soon. All right, y'all. This has been a Sports Ethos presentation.